All right, you're listening to HawkeTalk. I'm here today with Jaspar Weir. How you doing, man?
Hey Eric, I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, man. Good to have you. So, got to start it from the beginning. I assume, you're born, you're immediately helping people outsource to the Philippines. You're like, this is it. Like, listen, this hospital won't do. We got to get some people in the Philippines, get some people in South America. We can get a lot more cost effective here, right? From the
Yeah,
get-go.
it's been a childhood dream of mine to run an international outsourcing company for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Posters on your walls of, I don't know what that would be, but with the icons of the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So to take it back, like start off, where are you from?
I'm from Los Angeles. Grew up
Okay.
in West LA. Went to Santa Monica High.
There you go.
So was LA through and through until I moved to Austin about 5 years ago.
Nice. And so tell me about your childhood, like growing up. How were your parents? Were they there? Were they pushing you to do stuff? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I have two younger brothers who I grew up with, an older half sister and half brother as well. But it was really the five of us, my two brothers and I, and my parents, and we're three boys, like textbook three boys. We were certainly a handful. Sports all the time, super competitive, vying for our parents' attention and just trying to beat each other at everything. We were also super close in age, so actually the three of us were in high school at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but we're lucky. We come from a really loving household. We were encouraged to try things and stick with things growing up.
And what kind of things were those? Like, what sports? What were you kind of into?
So we played soccer, baseball, basketball. Football, pretty much like everything. I played golf in high school, did a lot of skiing and snowboarding as I got older. And so really kind of developed my love for both team sports and individual sports, for separate reasons. But have always loved sports, and as have my brothers. And so that had a big impact on our childhood for sure. We were definitely encouraged to focus on good grades. And I remember, my dad half jokingly, if I came home with a test and got a 96%, he'd say, what about the other 4%? So but it was a very loving, supportive household.
I got to say, I love that because, again, we talked about this before, that there's not really, I've found a lot of consistency among success, but I was talking to Patrick Schwarzenegger about his upbringing because his dad, Arnold, pushed him, and his dad's line apparently is whenever they're out to like a nice dinner or they're on vacation in Sun Valley, et cetera, he looks at him and he goes, while you're all relaxing here, someone's working, someone's in the library, someone's going to beat you. Like, it's that having that from a parent actually does help, that little extra push, that more than you would push yourself.
Yeah, totally. So that was certainly a good influence, and made a difference as an entrepreneur when we went out and decided to do our own thing.
Yeah, got it. And so what was early entrepreneurship? Were you the lemonade stand guy in elementary school? Like, what did you do, little side businesses as you were growing up?
Well, more or less. I mean, early on, not as much, but Bryce, my co-founder and TaskUs CEO, Bryce and I, we've been business partners since we were 17 years old. So we started our first business in high school. So it was just kind of like always in our blood.
So what was that in high school? What were you guys doing?
So in high school, we had a very short stint selling women's belts. And we don't know a lot about belts, and certainly not a lot about women. And so that business failed pretty fast.
I'm curious where the nascence of that was. Like, why did you decide on women's belts?
Oh, I had met a girl at a camp, and met her friend back in New Jersey who was making these belts. And I was like, hey, I can be your West Coast distributor. I thought that was a really nice way to put it. And so we started distributing her belts for about a month. But that was really the first business. But for Bryce and I, our first real business started our freshman year. After our freshman year of college, we both went to Santa Monica High School together. I went to USC and Bryce went to NYU. And we had this idea that during the summer, kids who are 14 to 18 years old, say, in Los Angeles, really don't have a lot to do. And LA has this robust nightlife available to kind of 21 and over crowd, but if you're under, there's not really anything to do, and kids have nothing to do in the summers. And so we figured out that we could go rent out nightclubs in Hollywood on like a Monday night that were not that weren't making as much money. And as long as we served food as well, they had licenses to serve underage. And so we didn't serve any alcohol, but we started these parties where we would host hundreds of high school age kids. We both had younger brothers and kind of still were so close to it that we built this kind of, experience for a really like safe, fun experience for teenagers. And that was the business that we started and ran during college. And by doing that, we didn't have to get college jobs. It was really fun. We would kind of, we worked really hard at it, setting this all up, but they became quite successful. We just show up on Monday nights. We make more money in one night than our friends would all summer. And they thought we were crazy for trying this. But again, back to our parents believed in us and were like, we have no idea how this works, but go for it. And so that business taught us a lot about creating experience, taught us a lot about culture, and ultimately gave us the seed capital to start TaskUs.
Okay. And so curious, why not continue with that business? Like a lot of times you have this thing that's making you way more money than your peers. You don't just go, okay, I'm done, I'm going to go do something else now.
Yeah, we knew it was a great business to do when you were 19, 20 and in college. We also saw kind of the ceiling. Neither of us had an interest in actually being in the nightlife or hospitality space. I knew we wanted to do something much bigger. And so we kind of made a conscious decision like, hey, we do not want to go down this road. We love it for what it is and learn a lot from it, but had kind of our sights set on something different.
Got it. And so you're graduating college and somehow get into outsourcing. And I kind of do know the story, but I want you to talk about you guys took a trip or something, right?
Yeah. So, we actually, so the idea, Bryce was investment banking in New York during my senior year, and he graduated early.
Got it.
And I called him one day after I had studied abroad in Argentina, and I had this idea, and I called Bryce and I was like, hey, you should quit your 6-figure investment banking job. So I got this great business idea. We should go move to Argentina when I graduate, and we'll go open a frozen yogurt shop. That was the idea.
Shooting for the moon.
Right, that's right. Well, frozen yogurt empire, starting with one shop.
Yep.
I had wanted just to move back to Argentina because I love living there so much, and we thought it'd be a fun place to start a business. We wrote this super long business plan. We went down on a trip there to go meet chemists to kind of mix our flavors and talk to real estate scouts to see where we wanted to open our first store. Yeah, we were serious about moving down there and doing this. And then we kind of took a step back, had a couple sobering conversations with a couple local entrepreneurs there as well, and took a step back and kind of realized hey, if we want to try to build wealth in going down to the volatile Argentine economy and then coming back to live in dollars seemed to be not a smart strategy overall. And so so we decided to kind of pull the plug on that idea. But in that process, we said, all right, well, as simple as this sounds, how can we take advantage of the global marketplace and say, how can we pay for things in pesos and charge dollars? And that's really what got us thinking about business services. And because this was 2008 and obviously broadband and the proliferation of high-speed internet was well on its way, we said there's going to be all sorts of services popping up that are going to leverage the globe. And so at the time, Tim Ferriss had written The 4-Hour Workweek, which was a super popular book that I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, and kind of talks about this idea of a virtual assistant, a personal virtual assistant that's overseas somewhere. And he kind of romanticizes this idea a bit, but he romanticized the idea so much to us that we said, hey, there's going to be a lot of people that need this type of service, and so we're going to go start it. And that was the start of TaskUs 13 years ago. And
so, did you know where you wanted? Did you start with Argentina? Was that where your first people were?
Yeah, that's what we thought. We thought we'd be in Argentina, and then we said, all right, well, we should not just limit ourselves to Argentina. We should look around the globe, and that's when we started testing different service providers from all over the globe And through that, we found the Philippines. And we really loved the people we were working with in the Philippines for a variety of reasons, but like really great English, really kind of great customer service type skills, super friendly, really smart and hardworking. And that's how we decided to make our first country of operations in the Philippines.
Got it. And so did you guys go out there immediately, or did you just have a service provider that you found went, great, let's start selling a couple people and see how this goes? Like, what was the nascence of it?
Yeah, we started with like one virtual assistant through another service provider. And we're like, okay, we think we like the Philippines. And we just started like talking to people we were kind of meeting online. And we had talked to somebody there who we liked a lot because he was a doctor. And so we thought he was really smart and he spoke perfect English. And he kind of convinced us, he's like, I can open an office for you. I can open an office for you. I got a great location picked out. And if you wire me a bunch of money, I'll go open this office for you. And it was about $10,000. And for us, that was all the money we had left. At this point, we were living at home with our parents, and Bryce, coming from making six figures in New York, back to Santa Monica, was not happy. I didn't know any better, so I was living at home with my parents. But anyways, we didn't have enough money to go out to the Philippines and spend money to open an office. So we had to just blindly kind of trust this guy, which, looking back, it was a very, very dumb decision, but it worked out. And he went and opened an office. The great location he spoke of just happened to be next to his house. So it was just convenient.
There you go.
But actually turned out to be a really strategic area for us. So we went,
Why was it strategic? What was strategic about it?
It was just outside of the major city, Manila, right? Yeah. And so most of our competitors operated in Manila. Nobody really operated outside the city.
Yeah.
And that actually has turned out to be an amazing strategy for us. We've located a lot of our sites outside of the major metropolitan areas because there's less competition, wages are lower, people are generally happier because they don't have to travel an hour and a half each way into the city. And the talent's there. And it was really only at that time, as broadband was being rolled out in areas like the ones that we started in, that this became a possibility. And and now it's kind of been a constant in our location strategy. So so that was kind of the first, and we went, and had an office. I mean, this thing, Eric, was we have pictures of it. It's on a highway outside of Manila. And there's this like tiny little building above a mechanic shop that was like some weird little like grade school. And we took one space that was probably 300 square feet and had 5 people working there on little crappy desks. And then that was the start of TaskUs as a virtual assistant company.
And so so virtual assistants, where you started, did you go off after executives and people that needed virtual assistants? Like, what was the first sales aspect of it?
Yeah, the first, we went after individuals. So, small business owners, executives, really anyone that would pay us. I remember times I literally cold called the Chamber of Commerce directory myself and just was cold calling random people, trying to get them to sign up for our service. Not a very good scalable customer acquisition tool, but that's what we were doing at the time. And keep in mind, this is 2008, right? Yeah,
you got to get started. Yeah, bad time.
This is like nobody's spending money on anything. So, so that was, it was, and we're 22 years old, right? With zero experience. So we literally had no idea what we were doing.
And how did it go right away? I mean, I get all that, but did you get some customers right away at least, or was it kind of like, what are we doing?
We got a few customers, but it did not go well. We were making maybe a few $1,000s a month in revenue, not paying ourselves.
Yeah.
A lot of unhappy customers because that model is really challenging, and it doesn't scale very well. So no, it sucked. It was a pretty bad service. And the only good part was, often Bryce and I would do the work ourselves. And so that was a pretty good deal for most people. I mean, we think we're worth $10 an hour.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it was a good product market fit, but it just was not scalable and didn't make any money.
And so at what point did you go, like, was there a shift in that? Or like, at what point did you go, okay, this isn't working? Or did it just click somewhere? What was kind of that inflection point?
Well, we kept trying, took a couple of years and we just weren't making much money. And
so you had a couple of years of the virtual assistant side of things.
Yeah. I mean, at least, over a year. It was probably end of 2009 or so, 2009 and early 2010, where we got our first kind of enterprise client. And that's somebody both of us know, Jamie Siminoff, who went on to start Ring, which sold to Amazon, the video doorbell and security company. At a time, he was the CEO and founder of a company called Phone Tag, which allowed you, if you subscribe to the service, to receive your voice messages as an email. And it seemed like it was just technology that was, using IVR to transcribe. And really it was some technology, but it was really people. And so Jamie, we had met through a he's a friend of our friend's older brother. And we had met him at some event, and we knew he had some operations in the Philippines. And long story short, we built a relationship with him, and he said, hey, we had maybe 5 people at the time. And he goes, hey, can you guys have 100 people working in 60 days? And we said, yeah, sure. No, of course you can. No problem.
Yeah, that's what you say.
Yeah. And then we turned around, we're like, how do we do this? We don't have enough money to buy computers and all this kind of stuff. But we worked through it with Jamie. He was, he was really the reason that we were even able to start that business. And so we go overnight from doing kind of virtual assistant work to being like, whoa, we've got 100 people doing the same process for one company over and over and over. This is a lot easier and actually makes money.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so did that come up as just like, oh, we do this virtual assistant thing? He's like, oh, I need people in the Philippines. Can you guys help me out? Like, is it really just that casual of a...
We had people in the Philippines. He already was using people in the Philippines, needed more, wanted to take a shot on us. We were going to give him a great commercial model to make it worth his while too. And so it was him taking a shot on us and doing everything that we possibly could to make it work.
Got it. And so once that hit, off to the races, did you just start trying to replicate that and hitting up other company? Like what was the next step of that? I mean, I assume so.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It was like, okay, this works. Who else can we do this for? And
that was 2010, you said, right?
Yeah, 2009, 2010, exactly. Over 10 years ago. So economy is still in a really bad place, but you finally start to see some money flowing into venture capital at that time, right? And you start seeing the companies that we know of today that are big public enterprises starting to be built. Now, we didn't really work with some of those companies at first. Nobody would take us seriously, but there's a lot of small startups, and we looked around, right? In our industry, we were just in the Philippines. We looked around and we said, who are we competing with for talent? And it was kind of these traditional like call center businesses. And they had like really bad cultures. They weren't differentiated. Their big clients were like big telcos and banks. And we just were kind of scratching our head and saying like, this doesn't make sense. Like, we don't understand why these are such bad jobs with such high attrition. These people in the Philippines are amazing. They love the work that we're doing, and we just treat them like people, right? And so we kind of took that philosophy on the operation side and the culture side. And then on the other side, we said, look, we don't want to go work for AT&T and Verizon. Well, I don't think we could have landed them as customers anyways. But we said, we do know, right? We were in Santa Monica. We kind of identified ourselves as startup founders, and we just like went to people that we knew in the startup world and just started, telling our story as much as we could and saying, hey, we've got these people in the Philippines. We do like really whatever you need. Like, what can we help you with? And it was those conversations and finding client number 2 and then number 3. And
do you remember who number 2 was?
Number 2 was a customer at the time, was called Visible Technologies. They're no longer around, but they were a social listening tool, kind of like a Radian 6 or today like a Sprout Social kind of tool. And they needed, it's funny, you'll see a theme here in our early customers. They had this tool, this premium tool for their clients where they could listen to the sentiment, right? So Twitter had just come out, And for an extra purchase, for extra money, they would evaluate all of the tweets about your company and tell you, is it positive sentiment, negative, or mixed, whatever. Again, you think it's kind of you would think that this is machine learning, but it was just people, and we were just literally rating all these Twitter posts and comments and blogs for their brands, and so that was client number two.
Got it.
And then from there it was, and that was a decent size engagement for us at the time as well.
And I think it's funny you bring these up because it was such a trend in the sort of teens to the 2010s of like tech facade, but actually executed by people.
Yeah, fake it till you make it, and I mean those things still happen today.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But then and the whole idea, and this is still a big part of our business, is actually creating the data sets that are then used for end application in real time, but also create this kind of data exhaust that's used to perfect these algorithms. These algorithms have just gotten more and more complex in the past 10 years, but we were kind of early stage in helping to provide some of that data that powered some of those services. Same thing for companies who were transcribing receipts, right? Like you get your app and, oh my God, like magic, in 2 minutes, my receipts transcribed. But then you're like, wait, why does that take 2 minutes? That's because it's being sent overseas. You have somebody typing it in themselves. That's not OCR. That's somebody, sitting in the Philippines doing that. So a lot of our early work was kind of, the man behind the machine, if you will.
That's cool. And so I remember meeting you guys around that time. I met you in 2012 with Ellie and talking about outsourcing our customer service with you guys. And we weren't quite big enough, but I remember coming to meeting with you guys at the Santa Monica airport. Yeah. And I know there was a point not that long after that where you pivoted and you were like, we're not doing little, 1-person, 2-person customer service teams for e-commerce companies. Like that was a channel you looked at. Doesn't sound like it was ever a big channel for you guys. And then you kind of adjusted. Where was that kind of decision inflection where you're like, we're going to start, like, I know you got some massive customer at some point in like 2013, 14, I know.
Yeah. So we started growing. We had a relationship early on with Uber, and that kind of exploded for us, right? We started with a small team, and that grew really, really fast. And so we just realized that we would need to take on kind of bigger engagements over time. So we kind of raised our minimums. Actually, to a point though, where we said, hold on, we actually are kind of missing out on startups and some of the things that have made us successful. In many ways, we're like a VC where we're going in and taking bets on small companies. Plus, we love working with early stage companies. We love the passion. We love kind of like where they're at in their life cycle, and we want to be early partners. And so we actually a few years ago, we relaunched something we call TaskUs Launch, which allows us to take on smaller teams of just a few people. It's a little bit different operating service model that allows the customer to really work with us, and we provide all the handholding and some of the kind of tools that they may need at that stage to do customer support or that sort of thing. So we do have a product now that we use with smaller stage startups, but a lot of our work today is really with companies that have been with us for some years. And so some of them started as kind of growth stage companies and are now public, massive enterprises. And the bulk of our customers today are really, really large consumer internet businesses.
And so the Uber relationship, how did that kick off? Was it just they were in LA in the beginning and you got introduced to them in the entrepreneurial scene, or where did that come from?
Yeah, pretty much. And we started doing some work in the LA office, and we did good work. We held on. We competed for more work over time and just kind of worked up the value chain there.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a great partnership and continues to be today.
When I think a key part there that people glaze over is you guys delivered too. Like you've kept these relationships, not because of accident or anything, but because you guys did a great job and they don't have a better alternative because it's business. If they had something else they wanted to go with, they'd do it.
Yeah, relationships are really important, but only on the back of solid operations and delivery, right?
Yeah,
a relationship, to your point, relationship doesn't matter if you're not bringing the table stakes. Once you bring the table stakes, the relationship really helps you understand the needs of your customers. Right? And like getting insight into, hey, where are you going with your business? how are we doing for you? What else do you wish we would do? Like, how can we be better? Those sort of things I think are really helpful. And we do build up relationships like that with the customer, but the customer doesn't want to talk about what else we can be doing for them when what we're doing for them isn't going well. And so step one is just delivering on your commitments. And that's something that is, remains true to this day.
Yep, totally. And so what was the kind of next phase? So, you start getting all these enterprise clients, as you said, like, was it easy to scale where you're just like, all right, we just need more office space and more people. Like, we're just going to grow into this. Was there a point where you got a little over your skis?
Yeah. I mean, so to 2015 or so. 2015, we raised our first round of outside capital. We were growing so fast. That year we went from about 15 million in revenue to 54 million in 1 year. And we were really profitable. The problem was cash flow. So it was a weird situation to be in. It was a little scary. People were like, holy crap, the business is doing so much better than it ever has. This is amazing. But we're going to run out of money because we have to spend money to open new offices, right? And so we looked for a partner. We found a small private equity firm in the Philippines. At the time, we were growing from that year from about 1,000 to 5,000 employees in the Philippines. And so we had a small private equity partner that invested $15 million into the business and was an amazing partner for us and helped get us over that cash flow hump and helped us kind of just continue to professionalize the business. So that was kind of the next stage, was professionalizing the business. And then from there, we started to kind of open our operations in other countries and start to build our global footprint.
And so that 15 million was really just to manage cash flow, even though you were profitable, but you were able to finance your growth even after that, mostly through cash flow, through profit.
Correct. Yeah. We've had some debt capacity as well throughout the business, modest amount, but yeah, really, I mean, we have funded the growth and continue to through our own cash flow.
Yeah, which is such a testament in an age of raise money, burn rate. You guys never had a burn rate. You had some capital needs, but no burn rate.
Yeah, our burn rate was the first 3 years we didn't pay ourselves any salary. So that was our burn rate. After 3 years, we started paying ourselves $3,000 a month. So it was we certainly put in our time, I would say. But yeah, we were just, because we were bootstrapped for 7 years, the idea of raising money and having, to grow into some crazy tech valuation and all that, we just never were really there. We just were really focused on building a business that would generate cash flows, that was profitable, that delivered really good service to our customers. And we would talk to VCs and they'd always be like, hey, here's how we can, turn TaskUs into a tech business. And they just didn't get it, right? Like, people didn't get it. And we said, look, we may never be the high-flying technology company that you want us to be, but we're going to build a really nice business, providing great service to amazing, innovative customers. Perfect.
And so, and I know you guys then brought on a bigger private equity partner. What was it, 3 years ago? 3?
Yeah, 2018. Blackstone came in as our private equity partner.
So you were 3 years with this Philippines partner. What was the impetus to decide to take that on? And just a side note, you've always been an awesome advisor. You've given me some key advice that has driven me in the sort of financial decisions of my business and the way you think about it. And one thing, I'm just going to repeat something you said to me right after you did your first private equity round was, I don't know if it was advice you received, but you gave it to me, which is you have to separate yourself as an investor in your company and an operator in your company. And I was over leveraged as an investor in my company and I needed to diversify. As an operator, I'm still here and I still love it. So I'm curious, with that decision in 2018, was that part of that too?
Yeah, absolutely. It was. It's funny you say that. I'm glad that stuck, because the calculus is different, right? And so today I think about, okay, I'm an executive of the company, and what do I want as an executive? But also I'm an investor, right? I'm an investor and I'm an owner of this business too. And as an investor, what do I want there? And I really do try to look at it from those two lenses, because you have to. And so at that time, as an investor, right, I'm like, wow, my entire net worth is wrapped up in TaskUs. I've been working at this for nearly 10 years. It'd be great to get some sort of kind of personal liquidity and also set the company up for its next stage. And so that's how we kind of made the decision to to bring on Blackstone as a private equity partner and really help us get ready to become a public company, which we wanted, which is something that we want.
And so that was part of the plan. You knew that you wanted that in the path, and that having a partner like Blackstone would help with that.
We knew each step of the way. We knew that we think you always need to level up around your advisors, your partners, your executives. Like, you always need to level up for the next stage. And so we knew that working with Blackstone would probably be a big challenge, but we also knew it was kind of like the right medicine for the company, and it would just force us to have more controls, force us to be a better run company that would eventually prepare us for the public markets.
And so, how was that experience with Blackstone?
Oh, it was excellent, and they're still amazing partners with us. They're still very large shareholders today.
Oh, cool.
It was really fantastic. They pushed us in the right ways. They questioned our assumptions, but also it wasn't the traditional private equity play that some people think of, where you go in, you strip away costs, you put in new management, whatever. It was very much more growth focused. And from the beginning, they said, look, we believe in this company. We know the space really well. We understand your differentiators around culture and your clients, and we want to support that. We're not going to tell you how to run your business. And they've challenged us on certain assumptions that in a really healthy way.
Let's say that seems important.
Yeah, which is totally important. I mean, these guys they're pros, and they're so smart. And so they've been amazing partners. But they've really encourage us to continue to focus on our culture, which is, when you think about Blackstone, that's not the first thing, but Blackstone itself has actually an amazing culture as a firm. Now, while TaskUs culture is quite different, the focus on people and the focus on culture is consistent. And so that's something that we've been able to continue to do. They've questioned, again, a lot of the things that we believed to be true in our business, and have really forced us to run a better company for sure, but also have backed us. I mean, they haven't put anybody in. They've been resources and they've helped us along the way in areas that we need. And at the end of the day, when we talk about something or we have a disagreement, they say, hey, you know what? Like, ultimately, it's your call, it's your business. We're here to back you guys as entrepreneurs. And so it's been so encouraging and a really amazing partnership over the past few years.
That's great, because there's way more horror stories with PE partners, and Blackstone actually has a great reputation. They're one of the juggernauts out there. But and I'm curious, you've touched on culture a lot, and obviously it's a huge focus for you. What do you think you do about culture? Like, what are some things you do that differentiate you in that way? What do you mean by culture when you talk to how you take care of people?
Yeah, it's a good question, Eric. So there's two components of this. There's what we actually do, and there's kind of how we do it. And I'll start there. And the first thing is, the first key to culture is measure it and manage it like it's important. And most companies don't. And if you can't, I mean, we're big believers, we're data driven, right? And so culture can be this like nebulous thing. And we decided that if we want a great culture, truly a great culture, we would need to measure and manage it. And so in 2014, as we were growing from kind of one site to many, we knew we were going from hundreds to thousands of employees. We decided that we would measure our culture, which was a survey, an anonymous survey for our employees, where they could tell us everything about different departments and their experience at TaskUs. But ultimately, the question, how likely are you to recommend TaskUs as a place to work to your friends and family? The NPS, Net Promoter Score, that was, we felt, it's not a perfect metric, but we felt would be a good barometer of our culture.
And what do you think, what are things you feel are the things that actually move that? This is a debate I get in all the time. So this is a personal benefit as well. You see things like the Google model of like, we're going to throw tons of perks that are kind of intangibles. You can have snacks at the office, dinners, whatever. You see, I've had, senior HR people tell me, money and a path to advancement is super important. Like, what are the things that you think actually have moved, or have you seen have moved that NPS, so to speak? North.
So we've looked at a lot of data from our results over the past 6-7 years we've been doing this, and our eNPS has grown from a 4, right? And that's the scale is -100 to 100. Our first score was a 4. We thought we had built this great culture. We really did, but it was a big wake-up call for us. But we focused and measured it and managed it like we do every other metric in our business. And so we're in the 70s now with our eNPS, which is driven, we have a 4.7 rating on Glassdoor. I mean, all these things are real. But anyway, to your question, what we find the number one driver of ENPS, and it's not a surprise, is how you rate your direct manager. So it comes down to leadership. There's a 1-to-1 correlation in our data around how you rate your manager and your satisfaction with your job.
Yep.
No surprise. I mean, people know the saying, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers.
Yep.
So leadership development and leadership becomes the most important thing. Great, but also that's the hardest too, right? Because like there's no like, you know, couple of things you can do. You can't just go spend money on a nice office and all of a sudden it's done. Leadership development is something that's ongoing. It's something that has to become part of you know, the culture and part of what you do. And so whether that's paying for outside leadership development consultants to come in and work with your team, whether it's building in a coaching of culture where you're monitoring monitoring coaching and make sure, you know, for example, one thing we did for a while, we built a system and then we said, look, one of the keys to management is making sure every single person out of thousands in the company, every single person needs to have a 1-to-1 with their manager every single week. And we just kind of through surveying found that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So we created a system to track, is everyone doing 1-to-1s? We said, great, let's set a goal around compliance through weekly 1-to-1s across your organization. Let's drive towards that goal. We hit that. Okay, well, did we train people how to do good one-on-ones?
That's,
right. And now let's go and let's look at quality. Yeah. And so, and it's just a slow process, but over time, each quarter, we do something that we think is going to impact ENPS. We do something, we create a goal around it. We put someone in there to own it and we track it. We track it. And then at the end of the quarter, we see, hey, did that action have an influence on ENPS? And ultimately, like culture is whatever your people say it is, right? Like it doesn't, and you have to just accept that. And if someone, it's in perception in culture is reality. Yep. So it's always a guess. You never know. You know, just because you do something doesn't mean the culture is going to get better. But you have to take your best shot and make sure you're doing it and prioritizing it.
I was going to say intent and priority is also a big part of it. If you actually care about it, you can drive it in a lot of ways. It's because a lot of companies don't. They focus on numbers. They don't necessarily focus on people. Which right now, with the way hiring is, at least in the U.S., I'm watching so many companies complain about it. And you know, I don't know if you know Dan Price, but I think you probably know of him, the Gravity Payments guy. He was on this podcast too. He's the guy that gave a raise to all his employees above 70.
Sure.
So he keeps talking about like all these companies complaining about losing people. And he's like, you're losing people because you suck and they have options now. Like, you know, it's just, and even my own company, which actually our turnover has been a lot better this year than last, but we have turnover. And when we lose people, you have to take that as your own fault, whatever. And if it was a good opportunity for them to leave, like people leave companies, it's okay, it happens. But if it was someone you wanted to keep and they left, you made a mistake. You got to figure out like what you're doing wrong and what you can do to adjust. So I think a lot of companies miss that. So going back to it, how was the IPO experience? Dream of a lot of entrepreneurs. How, after building it and bootstrapping it a lot of the way and keeping a cash flowing business that frankly, I'm guessing with both PE funds, you never really had to answer to them because you had a profitable, growing, fantastic business. Now you got to deal with public sentiment. How was the process leading up to that, afterwards, et cetera?
Yeah, it was a crazy process to go through and really surreal in many moments. But you know, we started working on it over a year ago, and it took up the better part of a year. We finally debuted on the NASDAQ in June. And it's been a really good story so far for us. You know, I'd say the most special things for us, one was on listing day, and we were one of the first companies to be able to do in person again, as kind of COVID things seemed to be settling down at the time. And so we were able to invite not only our senior execs that you see up there ringing the bell with you, and some family, and but we also brought 12 of our frontline teammates from San Antonio. We wish we could have brought in people from all around the world, but COVID made that impossible. But we did. We're able to bring 12 of our most tenured frontline teammates to New York. Some of whom had never been to New York, and so it was. I mean, I was amazed by this experience that NASDAQ put on, and the kind of excitement of the day, and then to be able to celebrate not just with our C team, but with the people on the front line that make it all possible. Was really special, and to see it from their eyes as well, to be part of that was really awesome. You know, we also were able to pay an IPO bonus to every single one of our 33,000 plus employees.
Wow.
We're in 8 countries across the world, and at a time where COVID is raging through many of the countries that we operate in, even kind of small bonuses like the ones that we were able to provide, we're really happy that we were able to do that. So it was just an awesome experience. And also, for our clients, we're in a space that is highly acquisitive, and there's lots of consolidation in the market right now. And us going public was a way to tell our clients, like, hey, we're here, we're not going anywhere. If anything, we'll be the consolidator, but we're not going to go get acquired. And the reason you like TaskUs today will remain. We get to continue to operate the company and continue to build on our culture and what makes us special. That's
awesome. And I've actually never thought of that selling point with IPOing, that you become the acquirer and there isn't that fear, because there's always that fear with service providers. Like, when you're using someone for years and all of a sudden they get acquired. We watch it with our competitors when these agencies sell. It's like we laugh because like they're out of the way now, and we're not. We're in this for the long haul. So it's a fun part. All right, so I got 2 more questions for you.
Yeah. Number
1, what's next? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean,
skiing. What are you going to do?
Right now, for me, in terms of the company, what's next is we're building our board as a public company. We are continuing to invest in our people, continuing to invest in technology, and having technology be a better enabler of our service to our customers. Personally, I'm loving the Austin, Texas life. Trying to spend as much time as possible, enjoying the outdoors here while it's really nice in September and October, and not as hot as it was during.
I'm coming out for like 10 days in mid-October.
That's the best time of year to be here.
Yeah.
So yeah, just I really am a big fan of what's happening here in Austin. It's just it's amazing to see. So
nice. Yeah. And last question for the aspiring anything, entrepreneur, creative, etc. But anyone, what would be one piece of advice you'd give them that you either wish you got or you did get that you'd think it would really help someone that's just getting going?
If you do not ask, you will not receive. I think that is one that I continue to live by. Like this journey so well, you have to ask. And sometimes the answer is going to be no. Actually, more times than yes, you're going to get no's. And so we get no's all along the way. I still get a lot of no's even today. That never changes. So if people think, you can have a successful company and go through IPO and then everyone's going to say yes, or everyone's going to want to meet with you, still doesn't happen. But you got to keep going, and you got to keep asking.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Well, Jaspar, this has been awesome. Thank you for coming on HawkeTalk.
Thanks, Eric. Great to see you.
You too. All right.